as I've been talking about the enormous power, healing power of real love, I'm also mindful that simply feeling loved and loving doesn't resolve all differences. For example, we were talking about the example of Holly, who was being criticized for driving too much. Just because she becomes loved and loving doesn't mean the issue goes away. It's not like then, oh, poof, everybody knows what to do with the children, whether they go to the other school or the school they're in. You understand? But without real love, you have the emptiness and fear and the getting and protecting behaviors there that make resolution of the other issues impossible. Clear? So, getting loved and feeling loving eliminate the anger, the emptiness and fear, and the getting and protecting behaviors that make everything else impossible to get to. Then you work on the issues. But I can tell you that once you feel loved and loving, working on the issues becomes not a little easier. It becomes a whole different world easier. And until you get to that place, you can't even imagine how much easier. If you've got two people who feel loved working out differences, it becomes laughably easy to work these things out. It's really a joke because you care about each other. Why would you ever do anything to take advantage of somebody that you loved unconditionally? Why would you ever not listen to them? Do you see? You would listen completely. You do the thing, and here's a different thing about working in real love. You don't come to compromises where one person loses and the other person loses and you kind of, settle for something. No, you both unconditionally offer fully what you're willing to do. And the other person does too. And you'll be surprised how often that eliminates whatever issue there is. But let's talk some more, and I'll give you some more examples about how to work out issues. Now that you understand perfectly what real love is, we're going to apply it more specifically to relationships. 2 keys to success in relationships, real simple. The first key we've already talked about, telling the truth about ourselves, indispensable. Second key, never try to get any one person or group of people to love you. Boy, do we do that stupid. Look at the entire object of a date. What's the entire object? The entire object of a date is to get you to like me, isn't it? That's just stupid. Because now, even if I succeed, look what happens. If I'm trying to get you to like me, anything you give me can't feel unconditionally given, can it? No, I had to get it from you. Kind of dumb, huh? And yet that's how we conduct the beginning of almost every relationship. Our goal is to get our partner to like us. Disaster. So what's the alternative? Instead of trying to get people to like us, we simply put out there who we are and find out who likes us or loves us. Do you see how much easier that is? Getting is a lot of work, and then you only get imitation love. Whereas finding out is relatively easy. Remember the example of the farmer planting seeds. After you've planted the seeds, how much effort is involved in getting the seeds to grow? Unless you're an egomaniac, none on your part. They either grow or they don't. Same in great relationships. I just throw out there who I am everywhere I go now. Some people don't like me. One down. But think about how this works. What if I manage to manipulate and praise you and do all the clever things, and I get 9 out of 10 people in the room to like me? What have I got? Nothing. Whereas the alternative is, I just put out there who I am. And let's say 4 people in the room like me. The difference is I now have 4 people who love me unconditionally. That's infinitely more than 0. It's always better to do it that way. And yet, we tend to insist on getting love from one person. Have you noticed? All of the troubles I see in relationships are as a result of that. The wife comes in to see me and goes on and on with a list about he this, he that, he and so what I say is, so in other words, he doesn't know how to love you unconditionally. Well, yeah, I guess not. Has he ever shown any indication that he knows how to unconditionally love anybody? No. Well, then when are you going to quit trying to milk the bull? Never try to milk a bull. Frustrates you and it annoys the bull. We keep trying to get from people what they don't have. Do you see that? Instead, go tell the truth about yourself to people who can love you. Then you go share that love you have with others, and you'll be amazed at the difference that you'll see in them. Much more productive way to live. Now imagine the effect that this would have on dating. Huh? I mean, look how dating goes now. It's terrible, the results. I tell people that when you go out on dating, quit putting your best foot forward. Tell the truth about yourself right off. Not everything. One thing at a time. And people say, well, give me an example. Like when you sit down, you say right off, I always get nervous on a first date. Doesn't everybody? Say it then. And what if you say that? Or what if you say, I dress up nice for a date, but at home, I tend to dress a lot sloppier. I wrecked my last 5 cars. I don't manage money very well. When guys talk about football, girls sit there and nod their heads and go, oh yeah, and they act all interested. Tell the truth. I hate football. I don't understand it. I have no interest in it at all. If you tell the truth, these are just about little things. You tell the truth and the guy that you're with goes, what? Don't finish the hors d'oeuvres. Go home. The date's over. He just told you what you need to know, right? People say to me, well, but if I tell the truth about myself right off on a date, he won't like me. Hallelujah. Would you rather find out that the person you're with doesn't like you in 30 minutes or after 10 years and 3 kids? Pick one. Do you get it? We try to deceive people to like us. Then when they figure out who we really are, well, they're kind of annoyed with us, don't you think? And understandably so. Much easier to get the truth out of the way and find out if people are capable of loving us in the beginning. Don't wait. It creates a lovely foundation for a relationship. Now let's talk about the definition of a relationship. A relationship is a natural result of people making independent choices. That's a really important definition and has 2 basic parts. First, natural result, and then independent choices. Let's take the first. Natural result. If I mix blue paint and yellow paint, what color will I get?
Green.
How often?
Every time.
Every time. I don't get green because I want it to be green or because I work at it. No, I get it because the natural result of blue and yellow is green. The same is true in relationships. Couples come in to see me, one's blue and one's yellow, and they're both fussing because their relationship isn't pink or purple. You see this? If both of you have not known unconditional love your entire lives, you've been using getting and protecting behaviors your entire lives, what are the odds that in that moment you'll have an unconditionally loving relationship? 0. Not low, none. Now, it is possible to teach either or both person to make independent choices differently so they can learn to be loving, and that will change the nature of the relationship. Do you follow? But the relationship is what it is in that moment. You can't change that. And yet we want things to just be magically different. Couples are all the time saying to me, can you help us work on our relationship? No, I can't do a thing about that. Your relationship is what it is because of what the 2 of you are right now. But we can help you make different choices, which brings us to the second part, the definition. And that is independent choices. The law of choice is the single most important principle in relationships. And I suggest the single most important principle in the universe. I'm not kidding. Everybody has the right to choose what they say or do. Now, how could I say it's the most important principle? Imagine what the world would be like without it. What if every time you did something I didn't like, I reached out with my little force field and went zzz, and froze you? That sounds really attractive sometimes, doesn't it? But that wouldn't be fair if it was only me. We should let you do that.
Yeah.
And so every time I do something you don't like, just you can freeze me. Well, these people are jealous. So everybody gets one of these. What would the world be like? The world would be a popsicle. Now, if we are frozen and we can't make our own choices, is it possible for us to be happy? No, absolutely not. The law of choice is indispensable to happiness. Do you see that? In fact, I suggested it's the ultimate evidence of God's love for us that the law of choice exists. What if God had that little force field and every time we did something unfair, unloving, unjust, mean, whatever? Popsicle. All of us. No, God understands that we have to be able to make our own choices in order to be happy, even the stupid ones. And yet we think we have a better way. Now, in our heads, we say we believe in the law of choice, but every time somebody makes a mistake and we become irritated, what are we saying? I believe in the law of choice. You get to make your own decisions, your own choices, until you inconvenience my Royal Highness. And then the law of choice is repealed and I get to control you. That's what anger means. It's incredibly arrogant. And we do it quite a bit. We want to repeal the law of choice. Now, I was talking to a lady named Joan, whose husband's name is Tyler. And Tyler was messier than most guys. A bit of a pig, actually. Everywhere this guy went, he left a trail of food and peelings and plates and underwear, auto parts. He was disgusting. And I said, "You sound kind of irritated about that." She said, "Yeah." I said, "So you expect him to be neater?" "Yeah." I said, "Then you're doomed." "What do you mean?" I said, "When you married Tyler, was he a pig?" "Yeah." "And now you're surprised that he's a pig?" "And besides, Tyler gets to choose to be a pig, even if you don't like it. He has that choice." She said, "But that's not fair. If he gets, what choices do I have?" I said, "You get 3 choices." You can live with the pig and like it. You can live with the pig and hate it. Or you can leave the pig. But them's is all the choices you get. You don't get the 4th choice, which is a myth, which is to change the pig. Because that would violate the law of choice, wouldn't it? So let's go over those 3 choices. When I say pig, I mean a person, a relationship, or even a situation that lasts just for a moment. So let's go over them. Let's take, for example, live with the pig and hate it. Has anybody here ever been in a situation or a relationship and just resented it? Oh, who hasn't? Have you ever been in a situation or relationship and resented it and been happy? Not once. In fact, I would say that the human family has probably proven several trillion times that that never works. It never produces happiness. So wouldn't you say we could discard that as the stupid choice? It doesn't work. So let's not do that. Live with it and hate it is just dumb. Now, how about leave the pig? Sometimes leaving a situation or a relationship, at least temporarily, is actually wise, especially when you know you don't have enough love to handle it. A lady came to me and she said, I've been attending a loving group, I've been reading the Real Love book, I've been telling the truth about myself, I've been happier than I've ever been in my life. But in 2 weeks, we have a family reunion. Ugh. And I have the family from hell. You know the kind where you walk in and they start. Pick. You put on a few pounds. Your husband out of jail yet? Your son still dealing drugs? They just start picking at you. She said, I just don't know what to do. And I said, well, why do you go? She said, well, I have to go. I said, oh, yeah, I forgot about the reunion police. Tie you to the back of the truck and drag you there. I said, what if you didn't go? She said, well, they'd be mad at me. Aren't they already mad at you? So she made the choice to leave the pig, to not go to the family reunion that year. Leaving the pig is very different from blaming the pig. You get it? She didn't go around saying, I didn't go to the family reunion because of those people. No. She got with her loving group with people who understood what real love was, and she said, I didn't go to the family reunion because I'm not loving enough to go. See the difference? When I go to the reunion, I start feeling like a victim. I start attacking. I start behaving in these ways. I'm not ready to go. I can't love them yet. Brilliant. She did that for a year. At the end of a year, she went to one day of the family reunion. At the end of 2 years, she went to both days. And it went great. Even though her family wasn't one bit different. They immediately started picking. But she didn't care because she had $20 million. See the difference? We can't wait till other people change. No, we have to get more loved so that when they do the things that they are going to do, it just doesn't matter to us anymore. And it didn't to her. Made a huge difference. And I suggest to people that they never leave the pig permanently, as in a divorce, until they have gotten to the place where there is no blaming and no anger. Because while you're blaming and angry, you can't see anything clearly. That's all. You're just blind. You can't make good decisions. Now, live with the pig and like it. Does that mean that Joan is stuck with living with a swine in her house? Not necessarily. I said to her, so what do you do when he leaves his underwear on the floor? I pick it up. Why do you do that? Well, if I don't pick it up, nobody will. And she never thought of that. See, a relationship's a natural result of people making independent choices. He gets to choose to be a pig, but she gets to independently choose not to pick up after the pig. Now, that doesn't mean going home and saying, I'm never picking up your stuff again. That's an attack. She just went home and stopped picking up his stuff. About a week later, Tyler came to her and said, where's my underwear? Which in North Georgia means, where is my underwear? And she said, well, I'm pretty sure I saw some over there under the engine blocks. She just answered his question. No lecture. She just answered it. And he said, well, how come it ain't in my drawer? She said, I washed all the clothes that were in the hamper, and I didn't see yours there. No lecture. Now notice, she's still giving him a gift of washing everything in the hamper. Do you get this? She's just telling him where the clothes have to be if she's going to wash them. Well, Tyler was about as smart as Molly the dog. Do you remember the dog? And so about a week after that, Tyler came to her and said, where are the dishes? She said, oh my, there are dishes all over the house. You can choose from any one of them. But see, he was looking for some non-crusty dishes. Tyler didn't change his behavior overnight. He didn't suddenly become a great homemaker, but he started picking up his dishes, started picking up his clothes, started getting the kids to do their jobs. He did 100 times more than he ever did when she was saying, I'm sick of seeing your clothes on the floor. Why? Because every time she came at him like that, what 4 words did he hear? I don't love you. And after that, their conversation was over. You see again what I mean by a solution will happen 100 times easier when you eliminate the anger. You may still have to work it out, but wow, easier, not a little. And he started doing a whole lot of stuff because he felt cared for. For one thing, when you feel somebody unconditionally care for you, what would you not do for them? See? Oh, it really makes a difference. So the controlling choice is one that we just don't get. We don't get to tell other people what to do. We only get those 3 choices. In life and in relationships, understanding the law of choice is critical. Just as important, however, are the laws of responsibility, the subject of our next discussion. Accompanying the law of choice, like twins, absolutely inseparable, are the laws of responsibility. Without responsibility, the law of choice alone is just chaos, just misery. First law of responsibility. We can make any choice we want, but we are responsible for the choices we make. According to the law of choice, for example, you can always choose to be angry, selfish, unloving, break the law, do anything you want to do, can't you? Of course you can. But the law of responsibility states that there's a price to be paid for that. And you don't get to determine what the price is. Which brings us to the second law of responsibility. Although you can make any choice you want, we can't choose the consequences of our choices. Can't do it. You can choose, for example, to speed, but you don't get to choose not to get a ticket. You can choose to sit on your backside on the couch and not plant seeds, but you don't get to choose to harvest a crop. See? You can choose to plant weeds, but you don't get to choose to harvest corn. It's called the law of the harvest. You reap what you sow. And this law applies to everything. If you make selfish choices, remember I defined real love as caring about the happiness of another person. And happiness isn't just doing what we want. We have to make choices where the natural consequences are happiness. Making sense? If you make selfish choices, if you are unloving, if you use getting and protecting behaviors, you cannot feel loved. You cannot feel loving. And you cannot be happy. It just doesn't work. It can't happen. It's an eternal law, not a law imposed on anyone. Do you understand? It's a natural law, like gravity. Gravity wasn't a law they passed and imposed on people because, somebody was irritable and controlling. No, it's a natural law that brings order and happiness to the universe. Not only do we have the right to make whatever choices we wish, the law of choice, but if we want to be happy, we also have an obligation to make choices, lots of them. It's those individual choices that determine whether we're happy or not. Although our lives, in fact, appear to be complicated, each choice we make is actually pretty simple. Do you know how often people say things like, well, that's just really gray. Life really isn't black and white. Have you heard that? People love to say that, especially when they're doing something wrong. In truth, almost all choices are black and white. The choices really are between telling the truth and lying, between loving and not, between getting and protecting behaviors and happiness. And in the end, it really comes down to freedom and life, or captivity and death, doesn't it? Every choice leads us to that eventual reward. And it's because of natural laws, not anything that anybody's imposed on us. And so when we understand this, it's not negative. The laws of responsibility aren't a negative thing. They actually are also a guarantee. Do you see that? If we follow the laws that lead to happiness, it's guaranteed. If we choose to be truthful and loving, we will be happy, not might be. And so in place of the laws of responsibility, you could actually call them the laws of happiness. If we choose wisely, happiness is our reward, and it's a promise. Third law of responsibility. We are responsible for our choices, ours, but not for the choices of others. In our society, we just don't see things that way. When somebody does something to us, we make them responsible for our reaction, don't we? I was in the newspaper in the town where I live. I live in a smaller town, and it's kind of a small town newspaper. and the newspaper reports everything that anybody does wrong in the town that day. Everything. The police report everything. And so I was reading the paper that here was this guy who was driving drunk. And he was driving on a rural road, and he just fell asleep, and his car just kind of went off the road into a ditch, and he woke up in the morning, and the police took him home, and everybody laughed, and, that's all there was to it. A few days later, another man on a similar country road not very far from there was doing exactly the same thing. Driving drunk, fell asleep, car started to veer off the road, except he hit a child on a bike and killed the child. Now, guess how society judges those two men? vastly differently. See that? We judge people according to the consequences of their actions, not their actions. Both men were simply guilty of being thoughtless, inconsiderate, and driving drunk. But we punish the trash out of the one and laugh at the other. And all of your life, people will try to make you feel responsible for their choices. An illustration. I'm walking on a path in the woods. It's a beautiful day. And I'm not really watching what I'm doing. And so as I'm walking along, I bump into a guy who's also walking on the path, and he's out just loving the day. And I bump into him, and he turns to me and he says, "Is this a great day or what?" And we have a great conversation about the beauty of nature, and then I move on, he moves on. We've had a just great time together. I walk further along the path. I bump into a man who's talking to his friend, and he's so intent on his conversation, he doesn't even notice that I bumped him. Doesn't even know I've done it. I keep walking. Again, I bump into somebody who came to the park just mad at the world. I bump into him. He stomps up and down. "How could you be so careless and so rude?" And in the process of jumping up and down, turns his ankle and breaks it and has to be carried out of the park. I continue on the path. I bump into a fourth man who's depressed and angry and at the end of his wits. And as I bump into him, he says, "That's the last straw. I can't take any more," pulls a gun out of his pocket, shoots me in the leg. The recoil pushes him backward. He goes over a cliff and dies. What am I responsible for? I'm responsible for bumping carelessly four people exactly the same way. That's all I'm responsible for. Do you see that? Whereas most of us tend to buy into what people tell us. I'm responsible for, if that's true, then the same action, I'm responsible for killing one man and making one other man happy by doing the same thing. No, we are not responsible for other people's choices. Or then we buy into that "you make me angry" thing. And that's the end of the world. When we understand the law of choice, the law of expectations is obvious. If the law of choice is true, that you get to make whatever choices you want to make, then who in the world do I think I am that I get to expect you to make the choices I like? Do you see the selfishness of that? And yet we do that all the time. Every time I become irritated at another person, what am I saying? "I expected you to behave this way, and you didn't." Well, who am I to expect you to do anything? Excuse me? I don't rule you. And yet we have expectations constantly. Expectations are wrong because they violate the law of choice and they don't work. Let's say that I expect from you a dozen roses on my birthday, and you give me 9. Guess what I'll be thinking about? The 3 I didn't get. Do you see what just happened? With my expectations, I just took your 9 roses and threw them in the garbage, all by myself. I ruined your gift with my expectations. Stupid, huh? Whereas if I expect 0 and you give me even 1, I'll be thrilled. Now, ironically, if I expect 12 and you give me 12, do you know I still won't feel loved? I will feel like you filled my order. That's all. I mean, you go to McDonald's, you pay them $1.49 for an order of fries, and the clerk gives you the fries. Do you ever go, "That's so touching"? No, because you paid for it, you expect it. Expectations ruin any possibility of feeling loved. And we do it to ourselves. A man called me and he was describing the relationship with his wife. And they'd become more like roommates, which is very common. He said, "We don't do anything together. We don't go anywhere." He said, "I haven't had sex with her in 4 months." And I said, "Well, you sound kind of mad about that." "Yeah." I said, "Well, I haven't had sex with her in 4 months either." He was relieved. But the difference is, I'm not mad at her. He had to think about that. "Well, that's different." "How's it different?" "Well, she's my wife." "Oh, so because she's your wife, she has to have sex with you. That must be very romantic." You get it? Anytime you expect a thing from somebody, Boy, that just pretty much eliminates the possibility of love, doesn't it? It just chokes it right out. Now, there is one exception to the law of expectations, and that is a promise. If I promise you that I'll do a thing, you have a right to expect that I'll do it. If I promise my wife that I'll pick the kids up after school, she has a right to expect that I'll do it. Otherwise, we'd both have to be there to pick up the kids at school. Do you see? So now, what if I arrive at home without the kids? Which I've done. Oh, hi, Greg. Good to see you home. Where are the kids? Probably at school. Where I left them. Now, is she justified in being angry? No. Anger is always selfish and wrong. There's a difference between having a right to an expectation and demanding that it be filled. Do you see that? For example, in this state, if I pull up to a four-way stop at exactly the same time you pull up to a four-way stop and you're on my left, who has a right to go into the intersection first? Me, of course. Because I'm on the right. And so I start into the intersection, but you do too. Do I have a right to continue? Yes. And if I exercise that right, I might be dead right. Same in relationships. Somebody makes you a promise? Sure. You have a right to expect that they'll do it. And if you demand that they fill your expectation, you're done. You kill all possibility of love. And no task, no promise is more important than feeling loved or being loving. Nothing. See the point? Now, you can ask for anything you want. You can make requests all you like. But we're not very good at making requests. Have you noticed? Instead of making requests, we make demands. Do you know the difference? Most of us don't. If I make a request of you and you give me everything I want every time I ask you, I probably won't know the difference between whether I'm making a request or a demand. You find out when the person you're making a request of, or that you think you're making a request of, says no. And if you say no and then I'm irritated, it wasn't a request. You see? It was a demand. That's how you tell. Disappointment and irritation are the signs not only of imitation love, but signs of expectations, demands. So, feeling loved is wonderful. But way better than feeling loved is the feeling that comes from loving others. That's the greatest joy there is. Well, if it's so cool, why don't we do it all the time? Because you can't give what you ain't got. Make sense? You're starving to death in the middle of the desert. And I come up to you and I say, well, feed yourself. That'd be kind of annoying. Your response would be, with what? Right? And yet, in self-help books and a lot of places, people, it's really advocated strongly, we just need to love ourselves more. With what? If you don't have it, how do you give it either to yourself or to anybody else? We have to get it from somewhere. As long as we feel empty and afraid, we can only see other people in terms of what they can do to us or for us. Do you see that? You become an object to me. I couldn't possibly love you as long as I only see you in that way. But once I tell the truth about myself and I get enough unconditional love in my own life, as soon as I feel loved enough, I can then be freed from the blindness of my emptiness and fear. I can then begin to see you, accept you, and love you. You did that 2 times since we've been talking. Do you remember? We have a desire to be loving. Remember when we did the example of the drowning man? And as you saw what the problem was with that drowning man, you immediately went to accepting, you lost your anger, and then loving, wanting to reach out and helping. Just like that. We want to do that. As I told you the story of my life, drug addict, screwed up in countless ways, made innumerable mistakes as a husband, father, it went on and on. I looked at you and saw your reaction to me. And you felt closer to me, more concern for me, more accepting of me after I told you the truth about myself, even unflattering things, than you did before. We want to love people, But we have to have something to hang on to, and only the truth will provide us with that. The lies just won't do. The more loved we feel, the easier it is to love other people. It's like filling up a bucket with water. The more bucket that's in the water, the more water that's in the bucket, the easier it is to share with you. If the bucket is filled to overflowing, it's easy to share, isn't it? But there's a difference between filling up a bucket with water and filling up with real love. And that is that if you make a choice to share with people whatever bit of unconditional love you have, even though your bucket's not full, even though you just have a little, you'll end up with more in the bucket afterward than you had before. And that's a miraculous thing. So as we, in addition to telling the truth about ourselves, if we make conscious choices to share what we have, it will be multiplied to us. We'll have more than we started with. And the cool thing is that if I choose to be loving toward you, I will feel more loved afterward, whether you return that love or not. Pretty neat thing. Because anger probably causes more destruction to relationships than any other thing I can think of. Just brings an end to love, just like that. I want to discuss how we can improve the way we react to anger. And I actually suggest that, and you can do it afterward, that we write these things down on a 3x5 card. Put them in your purse, put them in your wallet, tape them to the dash, staple them to your forehead. That will change your life immediately. If you will read these every day, you can't be the same. No kidding. First step, be quiet. If you can't remember be quiet, remember shut up. Think of all the times that you've tried to express anger to somebody and hoped it would turn out better. Did it ever? Well then, come on. It doesn't work. Now, I'm not saying stifle your anger or pretend you're not angry. That doesn't work either. What I'm saying is that while I'm angry at you, coming and expressing my anger to you never works because it comes across as an attack. You see? No, instead, I can express my anger about you, but I need to do it with somebody else. And we'll talk about how to do that in a minute. Because the goal is to get the love that I need. Second, be wrong. The whole purpose of life, as we said, is to be happy. Anger destroys happiness, and for that reason is always wrong. If you can remember that anger is wrong, it's a lot easier to do the first step, which is to be quiet, isn't it? Third, feel loved. Now by that I mean remember that you've been loved. That only works if you've already told the truth about yourself to some other people, and this is how it would work. Let's say I'm angry at you. I could require that you change your behavior in order to lose my anger, but that doesn't work. What if instead of doing that, what if I remembered that on previous occasions I had told the truth about myself to you and to you and to you, and these people had loved me unconditionally as I told the truth about my getting and protecting behaviors. While I'm angry at you, if I can stop and shut up and remember that my anger at you is selfish, and remember that these three love me, I'll lose my anger at you. You can't feel loved and angry at the same time. Can't do it. Fourth, sometimes the first three steps aren't quite enough, which is why there are 5 steps. Fourth is get loved. Sometimes we need to actually go to the well and get more water. A friend of mine in Atlanta named Jeff works at a power distribution company. They reroute power all over the country. And he and his boss were in a vigorous argument about how to reroute the power, whether to send 15 or 20 gigagillion watts to wherever it was going. And they were getting angry and angry at each other. My friend, in the middle of these blueprints and video displays, pulled out a 3x5 card, which his boss assumed was about power distribution. It was this. And he pulled out the card and remembered, shut up, you're wrong. Now, when I say wrong, that doesn't mean he's wrong about the issue of the power distribution. Clear? He's wrong to be angry. He read, feel loved. He'd been in a loving group for years. But in that moment, he was still mad. So he said to the boss, hang on a second, I got to go make a phone call, I'll be right back. Now the boss assumed he was going to call a power plant. He called me. And he didn't say anything clever and cute about his getting and protecting behaviors. He just called me and he said, I want to kill him. I didn't have to say anything clever or therapeutic. I just said, so what are you afraid of? Because anger is always a response to emptiness and fear. And he started laughing immediately. He said, I forget this so easy. I'm afraid he's trying to control me, make me look bad, hurt my job, blah, 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 blah. And all I did was listen to him and love him. And as I did that, I filled up his bucket. And I'm just a flawed human being. He could have called any of you. Nothing special about calling me. And as his bucket filled up with real love, and as his emptiness and fear went away, what do you think happened to his anger? Just like that. It just goes. Do you remember watching Holly up here? She started off going, well, he did this, and he did that. Let's kill him. And after feeling just a moment of feeling loved, whew, gone. Cool, huh? Then he went back with his boss, and again, an illustration of what I talked about at the beginning of this module, with the absence of emptiness and fear, they worked out the issue of the power distribution in moments. Now, they still had to work it out, but it was so easy without the contention. See that? Really easy. All the conflicts in life that we have are as a result of emptiness and fear, not as a result of differences of opinion. The fifth step in responding to anger is to be loving. Now, that can be the hardest one. But sometimes the thing that we need to do is simply make a conscious choice to do the loving thing. A man called me and he said that he and his wife had an agreement. He worked full-time, she worked part-time, so she got home several hours before he did every day. And so their agreement was that she would fix dinner for him and for the kids. Fine, but she often didn't. And on this particular day when he got home, nobody even knew where she was. He was furious. He pulled out his 3x5 card. He remembered to shut up. He didn't call her on the phone and tell her she was a witch, which I thought was smart. He remembered that he was wrong to be angry. He was still mad. He remembered that there were people who had unconditionally loved him, still mad. So he called me. And I sort of laughed with him and talked about what he was doing, and we talked about what. We tried changing his judgment. Nothing worked. He was still mad. So I said, I can only think of one thing to do. Fix dinner. But not fix dinner like, look what you made me do. No, fix dinner and offer it as a loving gift to her. It's really difficult for me to choose to do a loving act for you and stay mad at you. You know? By the time she got home, he was done. He wasn't mad anymore. Now, I realize that can be the hard thing to do. But sometimes engaging consciously in a loving act will make all the difference. Now, the cool thing is, let's say I'm mad at you, and you're not available. I can't do a loving act for you. If I do a loving act for you or anybody else, that's good enough. Because remember, we talked about the fact that as we choose to be loving, we end up with more love in our bucket than we started with. Do you see? So it doesn't have to be with you. Real love from any source is healing. We don't have to be demanding about exactly where it comes from. And that frees us up to get it from wherever. Cool, huh? Real love changes the way we find partners in dating. It changes the way that we establish relationships. It changes the way that we interact with our partners in marriage. It changes the way we see sex in and out of marriage. It changes the way we take care of our children, the way we interact with our customers and coworkers, employees, supervisors. It changes the way we see everything. Imagine, again, a life filled with real love. Imagine a life where anger and fear and contention are banished. It's worth everything you'll ever do to find a life like that. Everything. It's the pearl of great price, so to speak. It's the thing that we'd be willing to sell everything else we have to find. It's the life of peace and happiness that we've always wanted. Now, are we willing to do what it takes to find it? It's not complicated. It starts with just a little bit of telling the truth about ourselves and finding real love. And it will happen if we start it now. It's easy. Exercise a little faith and do it. And after the first couple of times, I get these emails from all over the world every day. I did it, and it works. Yeah, it really does. And the only way to find that it works is to actually do it. Tell the truth on the phone, in person, in groups. You saw examples of us doing up here in the third module, as we did it in real life with a couple of people. Read the book Real Love. Read the book Real Love for Wise Men and Women. All of those things will help you in this process. Let me summarize this last module. In order to have successful relationships, we must simply tell the truth about ourselves and not try to get other people to like us or love us. We'll be much happier if we realize that everyone has the right to make their own choices and that we don't have the right to expect them to do what we want. Third, when we understand that we don't have the right to control other people, we realize that in any interaction or relationship, we have three choices: live with it and like it, live with it and hate it, or leave it, but not to control the other person. Fourth, although we certainly have the right to do whatever we want, we are also responsible or accountable for those choices. There are always consequences which we don't get to choose for the choices that we make. Fifth, as we feel more unconditionally loved, we lose our emptiness and fear, and then we gain the ability to see other people clearly and to accept and love them. We also feel more loved and more loving as we make conscious decisions to love others. And last, we can gradually eliminate the destructive power of anger as we realize the selfishness of it, as we refrain from expressing it to the people we're angry at, as we remember the love that we do have, as we tell the truth about ourselves and receive the real love that's offered to us unconditionally, and as we make conscious choices to be loving. I have shared the principles of real love with people all over the world, and I'm impressed with the absolutely consistent, positive results experienced by those who diligently apply these principles. People are simply amazed at the genuine, lasting differences they're seeing in their lives, often quite noticeable in a matter of days or weeks. Singles are completely changing the way they see love, falling in love, and dating. Finally, they're finding the kind of partners they've always wanted, and they're learning what it takes to build those relationships in a healthy and lasting way. Married couples are learning how to overcome the wounds and obstacles that have been bleeding the joy out of their relationships. They're learning how to really love one another, and in the process, they're creating a level of happiness they'd never imagined possible. Parents are discovering that raising children who feel loved and who are loving and responsible is so much easier and fruitful than everything else they've tried. Parenting doesn't have to be the stressful and confusing experience that it is for so many of us. We've all experienced so much frustration, irritation, and pain in our lives that we've come to accept it as normal. It does not have to be that way. The bottom line is this: people are eliminating the fear, frustration, and anger from their lives, and instead they're finding peace and real power as they feel unconditionally loved and as they share that real love with others. These people are not unique. You too can learn to find the genuine happiness they have found. As you learn the principles of real love, it's very likely that you'll have many questions. You'll wonder, exactly what does this principle mean? How would I apply that to my husband or my child or on a date? I have seen the results of real love in so many lives and with such consistency that I don't hesitate to make you a promise. If you will dedicate yourself to the pursuit and sharing of real love, you will be rewarded in ways you can scarcely imagine at this point. I know this sounds like a grand claim, but real love has a greater power to change our lives than anything else. By far, it simply works. What would you pay for a sense of absolute peace? For the power to feel happy and undisturbed in the face of any conflict or difficult situation? For the feeling that you are loved without condition and the ability to share that feeling with those around you? Frankly, We already pay with everything we have, with our very lives, for much less than the positive feelings and qualities I just described. We trade everything we have for conditional approval, for power, and for other things that are pale, shallow imitations of love. Essentially, we give up everything in return for nothing. The price for finding real love is much less than what we're paying now. We only have to learn a few real love principles, and then we will change the way we see and feel about everything. I have counseled with a great number of people from all over the world, and I've seen individuals, couples, and parents spend countless thousands of dollars on individual counseling, group therapy, marriage counseling, and professional help for their children. Singles spend vast sums on internet dating and on the dating process itself. And by way of contrast, I've received thousands of communications now from people who have said that exposure to real love has made all that counseling and professional help completely unnecessary for them. Real love has revolutionized their lives in dating, marriage, parenting, business, and every other aspect of life. I personally know of no more powerful way to begin the journey toward real love than to subscribe to Real Love, and it won't cost thousands of dollars. The monthly cost of subscription is less than the cost of a dinner for two, less than the cost of half an hour of therapy, less than $1 a day. As a physician, I have stood at the bedsides of many people who were close to death, and I can tell you that at the end of our lives, we don't care how much money we have. We don't care how many people we control or how big our house is or how many people we've persuaded to praise us or respect us. What matters to us is how loved we feel and how well we have loved those around us. Don't wait till the end of your life to figure out these pivotal priorities. Decide now that you'll do whatever it takes to find and share real love. As you do that, you'll find the happiness you've always wanted as an individual, and you'll be able to participate with far more power and pleasure in all your relationships: dating, marriage, parenting, other family associations, friendships, and in the workplace.
I'd say do it now. You just can't do this stuff soon enough, and the more you practice, there's sometimes a fear because it brings up all of these issues, but when you do it and you make a commitment and you take action, it will transform your life. Are you willing to be happy, and are you willing to do the steps necessary to get you there? Sign up today.
Do it. Stop everything you're doing right now and do it.
Don't hesitate. Jump in. It's just remarkable, and I think so many times we hear from people, you should try this, it'll change your life. And this is, you hear that and then you try something for a couple of weeks and you think, oh, forget about that, and you move on. This is totally different. And this has been 2 years that I've been working on these principles with my marriage, with my kids, in my friendships and relationships, and it's amazing how it can change your life and how you can just become a whole lot more peaceful and happy walking through your days.
Oh, I would encourage it, absolutely. I'm very excited about it. In fact, I can't help but tell people about it. It has changed my life so much that I would encourage everybody to jump in head first and do as much of it as they can, because the results are phenomenal.
If someone were considering learning more about real love, I would think that it would be the greatest gift that they could give to themselves and to everyone that's in their life. Not only will they enrich their happiness, the happiness of everyone else will increase tremendously. It's one of the best things that they could ever do.
I'd recommend it for anybody, no matter what stage. I mean, whether you're a young person, a middle-aged, or an older person like I am. There's always ways that you can learn more and not shut yourself up and be open to new things. It's really great.
Do it, hurry. Go and seek it out, because I look at the age that I am, and I certainly wish that I had known of it sooner and could have practiced more of it. I think it would have saved me a lot of heartache and possibly saved my marriage.
Drop everything you're doing and get involved. Talk to a friend, read the book, call someone that's read the book, get to a seminar, and get involved. It's that important.
Never be satisfied with just getting along in life. Don't just survive, as most people do. Don't be satisfied with any more superficial or unproductive relationships. Instead, take this opportunity to subscribe to Real Love and find the unconditional love and fulfilling relationships you've always wanted. You'll be grateful for the rest of your life that you took this step. Remember, it's always about real love.